Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the show that takes complex source material, digs into it, and pulls out the essential knowledge for you, basically giving you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. And today, we're diving deep into something really fascinating. The history and, frankly, the intense discipline behind conditioning the American Pit Bull Terrier, the APBT.
That's right. Our source is a historical document, a good pit bull game dog keep. It's essentially a blueprint from that era, a very precise one, detailing the traditional methods they used to get these dogs to peak physical performance.
Yeah, and this isn't just, taking the dog for a run. We're talking about a complete lifestyle overhaul, almost. Incredible discipline, meticulous attention to detail. It really defined that old-school dogman culture. We're going to unpack the whole thing: diet, weight control, the workouts, and even the philosophy driving it all.
And it's important context. This document, it really showcases conditioning as just inseparable from the whole culture surrounding the historical pit bull game dog. It's a real testament to consistency, detailed record keeping. It connects the training, the conditioning, and what they call gameness all together.
Right. So our mission here is to lay out this entire regimen, really give you a clear window into that highly structured world of the traditional APBT keep culture. We're reviewing the methods and philosophy of that era, it's important to stress.
Absolutely. And for you, the listener, especially if you value getting up to speed quickly but thoroughly, this deep dive offers really specific insights. You get a clear picture of historical canine conditioning practices and just the sheer meticulous level of dedication that was required back then.
Okay, let's jump into the core philosophy then, because the author of this keep, they don't mince words. They basically say conditioning isn't just helpful, it's the deciding factor in competition.
Yeah, that's the absolute cornerstone. The premise was pretty stark, actually. Take two dogs, dog A and dog B. Let's say they're, genetically equal. Same natural talent, same drive, same innate courage or gameness. The belief was the one that went through the better, more scientifically applied keep, according to these methods, would win 9 times out of 10.
Wow. So it really shifts the focus away from just pure breeding or inherent ability onto the trainer's execution.
Completely. It puts the onus squarely on the preparation.
But doesn't that seem, almost unfair? Putting all the weight on preparation if the dogs are naturally equal. Was there no thought that maybe over-conditioning could be a risk? Dull the dog's drive?
Well, the belief seemed absolute, mostly because the keep itself was designed to enhance, not deplete. The philosophy was, look, natural ability is kind of useless if the dog doesn't have the physical structure to back it up. The cardio, the muscle endurance, the lung capacity to actually sustain that effort.
Okay.
If you have all the courage in the world, but you just physically gas out after 45 minutes because you're exhausted, well, that courage doesn't count for much then, does it?
Right. The preparation allows the courage, the gameness, to actually manifest fully. It provides the vessel, so to speak.
Exactly. Conditioning is the vessel for gameness.
And the keep even gives this specific percentage scale, right, to sort of benchmark the trainer's skill in building that vessel.
Yes, and that scale is really revealing about how they viewed it. Historically, according to this document, let's say, casual trainer, maybe someone inconsistent, they might only get a dog to about 50% of its physical potential. Skipping workouts, diets all over the place, not noticing the subtle signs.
Okay, so 50% is kind of the baseline if you're not really committed. What about someone more serious but maybe lacking that deep experience?
Right, the skilled amateur. Maybe they stick to the core schedule mostly, but perhaps they lack that almost fanatical attention to detail, the micro-observational skills. They might hit 75%, and that's a strong dog, probably enough to win against the 50% dog.
But it leaves that margin.
Exactly. It leaves a significant margin for error. Or, well, for being outdone when facing the absolute best, the top professional.
And that brings us to the top dog man, the one following this blueprint religiously. They're hitting 90% or more consistently. What does that extra 10-15% actually look like in a competition, physiologically?
Oh, that margin is everything. Physiologically, it shows up in a few key ways. It's not just about running further. It's about, say, the dog's lactate threshold.
Okay.
A 90% conditioned dog can sustain that intense anaerobic effort for longer before lactic acid builds up and forces them to slow down.
Right, they can push harder for longer.
And it's also about oxygen efficiency, how well the heart and lungs recover during tiny pauses in the action. The 90% dog recovers faster, gets more oxygen back in.
So they sustain peak effort and recover quicker than the 75% dog?
Precisely. And maybe most critically, that final 10-15% translates to mental clarity under extreme duress. When a dog hits absolute physical depletion, its focus just goes. Its ability to adapt, to respond, it deteriorates rapidly.
Makes sense.
The 90% dog, though, retains the mental resources and the physical stamina to push through that exhaustion barrier. That's how they secure that 9 times out of 10 win rate. Preparation literally becomes the weapon.
Okay, so if preparation is the absolute key, how did they historically prove it worked? How did they know the dog was ready? That leads us into the whole process of schooling and then the final testing phase, a really structured timeline.
Yeah, and the structure itself is fascinating. It really prioritizes slow, steady development, both mentally and physically. It wasn't about rushing things. It shows a huge investment in the dog's long-term potential. They absolutely did not want to risk burning out a promising young dog with intense work too early.
So walk us through that schooling timeline. It starts with introducing them to sparring or rolling.
Right. The keep is specific. Start schooling around 15 to 16 months old. That age was seen as the sweet spot. Physically mature enough for some stress, but still mentally adaptable, you could say.
And those first sessions were short.
Very short. Just 10 minutes initially. The goal wasn't endurance at this stage. It was about introduction, learning technique, building confidence.
And the progression. Talk about patience.
It really is remarkable patience. They would only add 5 minutes to that rolling time every 6 weeks.
6 weeks for just 5 more minutes.
Exactly. That slow, calculated pace, it ensured the muscles, joints, tendons adapted gradually, minimized injury risk, minimized the risk of mental breakdown too, and this slow climb continued until the dog could handle 25 minutes of sparring, which usually happened around their second birthday, about 24 months old.
So, okay, a whole year, more or less, of gradual work takes them from 10 minutes up to 25, but then comes the big test, right? The testing phase around 26, 27 months. This sounds like the ultimate check.
It really was. It was the litmus test. They needed an objective measure of whether the schooling, the conditioning, had actually worked. And yeah, it was a brutal challenge, physiologically and psychologically, 2 parts.
Describe that first part, the initial stress test setup.
Okay, first part was pure endurance under pressure. The dog was rolled against a larger, often heavier opponent for a full 30 minutes.
30 minutes against a bigger dog.
Right. This tested the physical conditioning directly. Did all that road work, the mill work, actually translate into sustained power, even when mismatched? The goal was to get the dog significantly fatigued, but not, completely broken down.
And what happened immediately after that half hour of intense work?
Immediately after. No rest. They'd bring in a completely fresh dog for another 10 minutes.
Wow.
And this is the crucial psychological part. The dog being tested is already tired, maybe hurting a bit, and now faces an opponent at 100% energy. And critically, the test demanded the dog being evaluated perform multiple scratches.
Scratches meaning?
Meaning they had to willingly, repeatedly charge across and engage that fresh opponent from a distance, even when exhausted.
Okay. So that's where the technical definition of gameness really comes into play. It's not just being aggressive, it's showing that sustained desire and commitment, even when the body is screaming stop.
Precisely. Within this specific historical context, that's how gameness was measured, demonstrating that unyielding will when physically spent. The scratch test proved 2 things. 1, the conditioning held up under extreme fatigue, and 2, the dog's inherent drive, its heart, remained unbroken by that fatigue.
And again, we're looking at these methods purely as part of APBT history, right? To understand the standards of that old Gamedog testing culture.
Absolutely. It's historical context. The protocol basically confirmed that preparation was essential, but that unwavering will shown in those final scratches was the ultimate validation.
The physical discipline for that testing is immense. But you mentioned the feeding discipline might be even more absolute. Let's dig into the nutrition and weight control side of this keep. It sounds incredibly strict.
Oh, it was. Nutrition is the bedrock supporting that 90% potential. You can work a dog intensely, but if their digestion is off or their weight is fluctuating wildly, you're undermining everything.
Yeah.
And the fundamental rule about weight in this document, which just shows an extraordinary level of year-round commitment.
What was that rule? The one requiring constant vigilance.
Keep the dog within a maximum of 3 to 4 pounds of its ideal match weight, year-round.
3 to 4 pounds? That's a tiny window.
It is. And the year-round part is key. This emphasizes consistency, not crash dieting before an event. The traditional dogmen understood that big, sudden weight swings put incredible stress on the dog's system, its energy levels.
Right. Crash dieting is never healthy.
Exactly. So by keeping the weight stable, the body was always operating efficiently. It minimized stress when they entered that final, intense conditioning phase.
And maintaining that narrow window required constant monitoring, daily weigh-ins.
Yep. Daily weigh-ins were non-negotiable, always done before feeding. That weigh-in was the trainer's immediate feedback. Did yesterday's food and exercise balance out correctly? It allowed for tiny micro adjustments in the food portion or the workout intensity for the coming day. Kept them proactive, not reactive.
Okay, let's break down the actual food, the specific components of this historical diet. It sounds very focused on lean, high-quality stuff.
Very precise, yes. The core protein was about 1/4 to 1/2 pound of lean meat daily. And what's really interesting is the specific preference mentioned in the Keep.
Which was?
Bull neck meat.
Full neck meat. Specifically, why that cut over, say, flank steak or round? What was the thinking there?
Well, the historical rationale often cited was kind of twofold.
Yeah.
First, bull neck is extremely lean. Very little excess fat to slow the dog down or add digestive burden.
Okay, lean makes sense.
Second, its texture is tougher, more sinewy, stringier. It requires more work to chew.
Ah.
And the belief was that this more intense chewing actually helped strengthen the dog's jaw and neck muscles, which obviously were considered pretty crucial during a competition.
So conditioning built right into the meal itself. Clever. What else went with the bull neck meat?
That lean protein was combined with some dairy protein, specifically cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese. Interesting.
Yeah, historically, cottage cheese was valued because it's a slow-digesting protein. We know it today mainly as casein. Feeding that was thought to provide a sustained release of amino acids overnight, helping muscle repair and recovery after the day's intense workout. Optimized recovery.
Makes sense. So lean meat, cottage cheese. What else?
And then that was rounded out with about 1.5 to 2.5 cups of high-protein kibble, forming the base calorie intake.
Were there specific supplements mentioned in the Keep to fill any nutritional gaps they perceived back then?
Yes, very specific. It mentions a 1-a-day type vitamin that included iron.
Okay, the iron 4.
Likely to support red blood cell production and oxygen transport. A clear nod towards maximizing endurance.
Right.
And it also mentions clovite conditioner. Clovite often contain vitamin A and D, things good for coat health, general vitality. It shows they were looking at both internal and external signs of peak condition.
Now, the timing of the feeding schedule seems really strategic. Why did they insist on feeding mainly at night?
That was all about performance optimization. They timed the main meal to align with the traditional timing of competitions, which historically often happened late in the evening or even overnight.
Ah, okay. So they trained the dog's digestive system to match the event time.
Exactly. By feeding at night, the dog system got used to processing food then and resting during the day. So come competition time, say 9 p.m. or midnight, the stomach would be empty. The dog felt light. And any residual energy wasn't tied up in digestion, it was available for the physical effort.
And that leads to the final fasting protocol, which sounds like the ultimate expression of controlling the dog's fuel state.
Absolutely. This was about maximizing control over external factors right before the event. It was incredibly strict. No food at all for a full 24 hours beforehand.
24 hours, no food.
That eliminated any risk of digestive upset, any weight from undigested food, and then, even more intensely, they instituted a 12-hour water fast immediately before the event.
12 hours with no water. That sounds risky by today's understanding. What was the historical reason for that?
Well, the historical rationale seems to have been threefold. First, obviously, maximum weight optimization for the official weighing. Critical. Second, and this is a key belief, they thought it prevented the dog from carrying excess fluid weight during the exertion itself, reduced any chance of internal sloshing or discomfort. And third, it meant the trainer had to carefully reintroduce hydration immediately after the match in a very controlled way. Prevented the dog from potentially gulping down huge amounts of water on its own right after intense effort, which they might have seen as risky. It was total micromanagement of inputs.
Wow. Okay, so when you put it all together, the year-round weight control, the specific meat, the timed feeding, the fasting, it really defines that traditional Pitbull Keep philosophy, doesn't it? Total control over every possible variable.
It absolutely connects back to that core idea. Eliminate any chance of failure due to preparation. Control the weight, analyze the meat, use slow-release protein, manage the final hydration. The goal was to ensure the dog's body was a perfectly optimized engine, primed and ready for the intense demands of that historical testing protocol we discussed.
Okay, so nutrition is dialed in. Let's talk about the engine itself, the physical work, the core workout regimen. This sounds like the real heart of the program, blending road work, treadmill work, and these specific manual methods like hand walking.
And just like the nutrition, even the intense physical work had a crucial preparatory phase. You couldn't just throw a dog into high mileage work. That's asking for injury.
Right. So tell us about that pre-keep phase. Those first 2 or 3 weeks focused just on getting ready for the real work.
Yeah, that initial phase was absolutely essential, primarily for toughening up the dog's feet, the pads. This meant short, light workouts, maybe just 10-15 minutes, often on varied surfaces, maybe slightly rough ground.
Why the focus on the feet specifically?
Because if the dog's pads weren't properly hardened, they could get severe cuts, blisters. That would stop the entire keep dead in its tracks before it even really started. A simple foundational step, but critical injury prevention.
Okay, feet hardened. Then the real endurance work begins. And the keep highlights one exercise as particularly valuable, right? Often seen as even more important than mechanical methods.
Without a doubt, hand walking. The source material calls it out as one of the very best forms of conditioning for these dogs, and the distances were significant, up to 5 miles a day.
5 miles of just walking the dog on a leash. Why was that considered superior to, say, letting the dog run free or just using the treadmill?
Well, hand walking offers some unique benefits you just don't get otherwise. First, the trainer controls the pace. It's usually a steady, brisk trot, ideal for building cardio endurance without the high-impact stress of sprinting.
Okay, controlled pace.
Second, and this is huge, constant observation. The trainer is right there, shoulder to shoulder. They're watching the dog's gait for any tiny hint of lameness, listening to its breathing, assessing his energy levels every single step of those 5 miles.
That real-time analog feedback loop must have been invaluable for hitting that 90% peak.
Absolutely essential. Plus, hand walking often happened on very terrain hills, uneven ground engaging stabilizer muscles that a flat treadmill might miss. And, there's the bonding aspect. It's quality time, reinforcing that partnership, focus, compliance, things that become critical when the dog is exhausted and needs clear direction.
Makes sense. So hand walking for quality control and connection. But the main engine for building that raw endurance capacity in the keep was the treadmill, the mill. And the progression described is, well, it's pretty aggressive over just 5 weeks.
Yeah, the mill work was the quantitative side, the measurable increase in fitness. The schedule was gradual to start, but the ultimate goal was very demanding.
Let's break down that schedule. What was the starting point in week 1? How fast? How long?
Week 1 was basically acclimatization. Get the dog used to the machine. They'd start at just 3 miles, which would take about 15 minutes. The speed was just a moderate trot, enough to keep them moving consistently, but not so fast it caused immediate strain. Consistency and proper form were key early on.
Okay, 15 minutes, 3 miles. How did it ramp up from there?
Pretty quickly, actually. By week 3, the acceptation was already up around 8 to 10 miles.
Doubled or tripled in 2 weeks?
Yeah, and by week 5, they were aiming for the full peak. 15 miles on the mill, requiring about 90 minutes of continuous, sustained effort.
90 minutes. An hour and a half straight.
Yep, continuous trotting. This demanded huge physical adaptation, obviously, but also serious mental toughness from the dog. 90 minutes of that repetitive motion takes incredible focus, and the trainer had to be watching like a hawk during that rapid escalation, looking for any signs of stress or the dog starting to, refuse the work.
That jump from 15 minutes to 90 minutes in just 5 weeks is incredibly intense. How did the keep advise trainers to watch for signs of overtraining during that climb?
Yeah, that's where those crucial observation skills came right back into play. The signs they watched for were things like lethargy outside of workouts, a loss of appetite, or significantly a change in the dog's stool, especially diarrhea, which they saw as a clear sign of digestive stress, maybe systemic stress.
Okay.
If any of those signs popped up, the advice was immediate. Drop the mileage back significantly, maybe throw in an extra unscheduled rest day, adjust the food perhaps, then resume the progression much more slowly. They were constantly trying to find that razor's edge between peak fitness and pushing the dog into breakdown.
Now, we have to touch on the specific performance supplements mentioned in the source. These really reflect the understanding and practices of that specific era, right?
Yes, that's a critical point. We're looking at this historically. The source mentions B15 and B12.
Okay, common vitamins even today.
Right, and back then, they were commonly used with the belief they enhanced energy, maybe supported red blood cell function again, thinking about oxygen transport for endurance. But crucially, the source also mentions the historical use of male hormone injections.
And what was the historical rationale behind using substances like that in a conditioning program back then?
Well, historically, these were included with the perceived goal of boosting things like aggression, increasing muscle mass, and speeding up recovery rates between those intense workouts. It reflected the methods and the substances that were available and utilized within that specific culture and time period, aiming for what they saw as peak performance benefits. Again, purely historical context here.
Got it. So after weeks of this escalating work, 90 minutes on the mill, 5 miles of hand walking daily, the dog is theoretically nearing peak condition. How did they make sure the dog actually peaked right at the competition time? How did they avoid arriving overtrained or just plain tired?
That's the art and science of tapering. The final week before the competition involved a significant, carefully planned reduction in the really high-intensity work.
Right.
The goal is to have the dog enter the competition fully rested, energy stores totally replenished, but without losing the fitness gains they'd spent weeks building.
So you back off the hard stuff to let them freshen up.
Exactly. Heavy mill work was either stopped completely or cut way, way back. The focus shifted almost entirely back to light hand walking, maybe some stretching, in those last few days. And just as important was the emphasis on scheduled rest days throughout the entire keep. Usually Sundays were mentioned.
Rest wasn't seen as downtime then?
No. Rest was viewed as an active part of the process. It was seen as the time when the body actually did the repair work, built the muscle, and locked in the strength gains from the workouts. Rest was mandatory, not optional.
And throughout this whole process, from pre-keep to tapering, that constant observation was key.
Paramount. The trainer was basically acting as a full-time, hands-on physiologist, monitoring energy levels, listening to breathing, checking the stool. These were mandatory daily checks. There's a specific example about stool. A consistent dark stool meant good digestion, good hydration. If it got loose or pale, that was an immediate red flag.
A sign of stress or illness.
Right. It meant immediate action. Mandatory rest day. Maybe adjust the diet right away. These kinds of analog physical indicators were their primary tools for heading off disaster before it happened.
The level of detail is just astonishing. And it even extended to logistics, right? Making sure something like travel didn't mess up months of hard work.
Oh yeah, that's the final layer of control. You get the dog to 90% peak condition, you absolutely cannot afford to lose 5% of that edge because of travel stress, stiffness, anxiety, dehydration. So the Keep gives really practical advice for getting the dog to the competition location safely and fresh.
What were some of those specific travel tips to maintain that conditioning?
The main rule for long drives was minimizing disruption to the routine. They advised stopping roughly every 100 miles.
Okay, regular breaks.
And during that break, take the dog out for a shorthand walk. Let them eliminate, obviously, but also keep the blood circulating, prevent muscles from getting stiff and cramped, from being stuck in a crate or car. Arrive fresh, not tight.
Smart. Were there mental preparations too, making sure the dog wasn't stressed by the journey itself?
Absolutely. They recommended taking the dog on practice car rides during the conditioning Keep itself.
Ah, desensitization.
Exactly. Get them used to the motion, the noise, the feeling of being in the vehicle.
Yep.
So when the actual important trip came, the car ride felt like just another part of the routine. Kept the guide calm, maintained that internal control.
And there was a rule about distance dictating arrival time.
Yes. If the travel distance was over 300 miles, the standard advice was to arrive a full day early.
24 hours ahead of time.
Right. Gave the dog a crucial full day to settle into the new environment, totally recover from any lingering travel fatigue, and, importantly, get back onto its precise feeding and hydration schedule before the final countdown to the competition began. Eliminate travel as a variable.
The sheer level of micromanagement down to travel stops, it really hammers home the dedication required by this traditional pit bull keep. Okay, let's try to synthesize the biggest lessons here for our listeners who want those key takeaways from this historical blueprint.
Okay, the critical lessons are pretty stark, really powerful. First and foremost, discipline and consistency. That's the absolute bedrock. The difference between that 75% dog and a 90% dog wasn't some magic trick. It was the unwavering day-in, day-out commitment to following that detailed plan, no cutting corners.
Right. And secondly, the huge emphasis on fueling the body correctly.
Yeah, nutrition and weight control are presented as absolutely equal partners to the exercise. The engine needs perfect fuel, and that weight has to be kept in that tight 3-4 pound window year-round. Consistency again.
And in terms of the actual conditioning methods, one simple, low-tech exercise stood out for providing that crucial feedback loop.
Hand walking. It's really highlighted as maybe the most effective conditioning tool, partly because of that observational aspect. It allowed the trainer to constantly assess, connect, build that partnership, complementing the raw endurance built on the mill.
And finally, the most essential skill the trainer needed wasn't physical, but mental.
Right. Observation and record keeping. meticulously tracking weight, stool condition, energy levels, judging those subtle signs. The ability to read the dog accurately and make those tiny informed adjustments. That's what separated the true professionals from the amateurs, enabling them to actually hit and sustain that 90% peak.
And we really have to end this section with that powerful quote from the source, the one the author gives as the ultimate secret to success.
Yeah, it boils everything down perfectly, stated very plainly. There are no secrets in conditioning. The only secret is dedication. That just sums up the entire philosophy of this historical blueprint. Success wasn't about finding some hidden trick or magic supplement. It was about the relentless, unwavering, daily commitment to executing a difficult, detailed plan. Pure dedication.
A powerful takeaway.
Absolutely. And this document, A Good Kick Bull Gamedog Keep, it really stands today as a classic, incredibly detailed window into those methods and that philosophy. It shaped the legacy of the Pit Bull Gamedog. It offers a unique and, I think, profound historical perspective on conditioning practices within that very specific culture. Really shows the enormous effort involved in chasing that elusive 90% potential.
And for you, the listeners, especially if you're a real enthusiast of the American Pit Bull Terrier, its complex history, the culture of these traditional keeps, if you want to dive even deeper after this, we strongly recommend checking out APBT INFO. That's APBT INFO, all one word. Their website and their YouTube channel have just hundreds of hours of detailed historical content.
Oh, it's an incredible resource.
Yeah, covering everything from bloodlines to deep dives on these conditioning keeps. If you want more specifics on this breed's history, that's the place to go.
Truly a remarkable collection, showcasing exactly this kind of historical dedication we've been discussing.
So we've seen today that sheer dedication was framed as the real secret here. It demanded this full-time, analog, almost obsessive commitment to observation and consistency, which brings up kind of a provocative final thought for you to mull over. In our modern world, with all the science, the advanced equipment, GPS trackers, heart rate monitors, sophisticated nutritional analysis, is there still something valuable we can learn from these old school, highly disciplined, purely analog methods? Methods focused entirely on intense observation, simple tools like hand walking, and just absolute consistency. Could they teach today's trainers, maybe enthusiasts of any discipline, something important about connection, about attention to detail, about true partnership with an animal? Definitely something for you to think about. Explore in your own time. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into history, discipline, and dedication. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.